A polar spell has gripped a large swathe of Europe, causing at least 61 deaths since it began last week. The deep freeze created hardship, especially among migrants, the homeless, and the elderly. Reports say one-third of the deaths happened in Poland. Because of icy conditions, officials in Serbia, Romania, and Poland asked people to halt shipping on rivers. Snow grounded flights in Greece, while a state of emergency was declared in the city. Temperatures plummeted to at least minus 20 degrees Celsius in Albania, with most rural areas cut off by the snow. There were temporary power and water outages in Albania, and army helicopters were distributing aid in remote mountain areas.
On Tuesday, around 2,000 people were asked to leave their homes in a rural California community near Sacramento after days of heavy rain threatened to cause severe flooding. North of San Francisco, thousands more were urged to seek higher ground as emergency crews and officials worked throughout the day to try and bolster the levee in Sacramento County along the Casumes River. Mary Jo Flynn, a Sacramento County Emergency Services official, said that the water was expected to spill over the levee before midnight, flooding low-lying roads and buildings with up to 1 foot of water. Meanwhile, the National Weather Service has issued flash flood warnings for a number of Bay Area counties as continuing rainfall swamps the region, according to CBS San Francisco.
This week, it has been declared that the rusty-patched bumblebee is endangered in the United States. It is the first bee species to ever be put on the endangered list. The rusty-patched bumblebee has seen its population diminish significantly over the past 20 years. Tom Melius, the regional director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, stated, "Pollinators are small, but parts of the natural mechanism that sustain us and our world. Without them, our forests, parks, meadows, and scrublands, as well as the abundant, vibrant life they support, cannot survive, and our crops require laborious, costly pollination by hand." Environmentalists are ready to fight for the lives of rusty-patched bumblebees.
Pakistan has fired its first submarine-launched cruise missile. The country's military said the nuclear-capable Baba-3 rocket, which has a range of about 450 kilometers and can deliver various payloads, was fired from an undisclosed location in the Indian Ocean. Praising the launch, Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said the test showed the nation's technological progress and self-reliance. The show of force by Islamabad comes amid heightened tension on the de facto border with neighbouring India. Hours before the test was announced, New Delhi said 3 civilians had been killed in an attack after militants crossed the line of control between the two nations in Kashmir. The incident was the latest in a spate of tit-for-tat strikes across the border since 19 Indian troops were killed in the region in September.
The Korean military is looking into the aerial intrusion by multiple Chinese military aircraft into Korea's defense identification zone on Monday. The KADIZ is near a cross-section of zones controlled by Seoul, Beijing, and Tokyo. Kim Jong-soo has the full story.
Seoul's defense ministry said Tuesday 10 Chinese military planes, including 6 strategic bombers, crossed into Korea's air defense identification zone several times on Monday, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. An official at the Joint Chiefs of Staff told reporters that South Korea reacted to the incursion by sending roughly 10 fighter jets, including F-15Ks and KF-16s, to the area, which reportedly sent warning signals to the Chinese planes. The Chinese planes made multiple passes into the zone near Yeodo, a submerged rock located off the southern coast of Jeju Island, and went through the Korea Strait into Tsushima Strait in Japan, before returning to China via the East China Sea. Japan has since confirmed it spotted 8 Chinese planes in its air defense zone, possibly indicating the other 2 planes turned back for home. A spokesperson for Korea's Ministry of Defense said China explained its actions by saying the flights were part of a military drill in its own air defense zone. The spokesperson seemed to acknowledge the remarks when he said China's incursion into Korea's air defense identification zone is not the same thing as a flight directly over Korean soil, nor is it a violation of its airspace.
Daesh terrorists have blown up a major gas plant in Syria which supplies 1/3 of the country's electricity. A UK-based Syrian opposition group said that the terrorists exploded the Hayyan gas plant in Homs province. in the past 48 hours, putting it completely out of order. The report comes following a video released by the terror group on Sunday showing a man planting explosives in the plant and blowing it up. The plant, which had been seized by the terrorists, used to produce 3.7 million cubic meters of natural gas per day. Since 2014, Daesh has seized several gas and oil fields in Syria, especially in the central and eastern parts of the country.
And that was not the only bomb scare today. There were troubling incidents at 2 Jewish community centers in Miami-Dade, and kids were caught in the middle. The same thing happened at JCCs in at least 5 other states.
And there was reportedly an incident overseas as well. CBS 4's Auralia Ortega is live in Southwest Miami-Dade with the story for us. Auralia.
Rick and Rudolph, what a scary situation for these innocent children who were impacted by all of this, along with their parents. We're told that anywhere from 15 to 19 Jewish community centers throughout the country received similar threats. Thankfully, the threats were all false. Frightening moments for hundreds of children at the Albert Jewish Community Center in Southwest Miami-Dade as a false bomb threat leads to an evacuation.
I think that this is something really serious, and it's kind of scary.
I don't like it. I don't think anyone appreciates it because it scares people and you don't really know whether it's real or not.
Miami-Dade Police and Fire Rescue responded to the community center at Southwest 112th Avenue and 111th Street. Frightened parents rushed there to check up on their children.
Imagine I have 2 kids here, so it's, your heart kind of sinks when you're seeing the helicopters, and as you get closer, you realize it's above their school.
There were similar concerns at the Jewish Community Center on Pine Tree Drive on Miami Beach, which also received a bomb threat by telephone. Some 300 youngsters were evacuated on Miami Beach.
I think it's a shame. It's too bad America is just so vulnerable. And it's sad.
Similar bomb threats were received nationwide at Jewish community centers in other states, including New Jersey, South Carolina, Maryland, Delaware, and Tennessee. The Jewish Press website also says Jewish centers in London were threatened. The Anti-Defamation League says the number of threats is alarming.
This is a lot at one time. There were a number of threats in January of 2016, interestingly, but not as many as we're seeing right now.
Rabbi Yossi Harlig, a community leader in the Kendall area, says the threats will make the Jewish community more alert, but at the same time, they will not let this disrupt their daily routine.
So we're going to show people that want to cause harm or people want to scare us to try to change our lifestyle that we will not change our lifestyle. On the contrary, we will go and bring more light to the world.
Local authorities tell us that the FBI is investigating the source of the threat and that they are also coordinating with the other investigations taking place throughout the country. Live in Southwest Miami-Dade, Auralia Ortega, CBS 4 News Tonight.
According to excerpts of remarks from President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of State at his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, he will say that Russia must be held accountable for its actions. Rex Tillerson intends to address the U.S. relationship with Moscow head-on in his opening remarks, after CNN reported Tuesday that U.S. intelligence agencies are investigating claims that Russia has collected sensitive and potentially compromising information about Donald Trump's personal and financial affairs. Tillerson said, "We must also be clear-eyed about our relationship with Russia. Russia today poses a danger, but it is not unpredictable in advancing its own interests." According to the excerpts, Tillerson will also speak about NATO's concerns about Putin and a resurgent Russia.
The Palestinian Liberation Organization has warned U.S. President-elect Donald Trump that it will revoke its recognition of Israel if Washington moves its embassy to Jerusalem al-Quds.
For President Trump to do so, I think he is ending a two-state solution. He is simply deleting, canceling one important item of the final status issue, which is Jerusalem. We will not accept it, and we will not deal with it.
The Palestinian leadership is also calling for protests in mosques on Friday and churches on Sunday. The warning comes as Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas wrote to President-elect Donald Trump, explaining the dangers of any such move. Trump has said he is in favor of moving the embassy. Palestinian officials say they have been informed that Trump may announce the relocation during his inauguration speech on 20th January. The United Nations officially terms East Jerusalem al-Quds as Palestinian territory occupied by Israel.
I can certainly understand why the Russians would be sick and tired of their meddling in our election. And frankly, I think there are a lot of Americans who are getting sick and tired of it too. Let's be very clear. This is all a political campaign, which includes the Democratic Party, the outgoing Obama administration, the mainstream media, elements of the intelligence community, in order to undermine Trump's presidency and throw a roadblock in the way of warming any relations with Moscow. That's what this is really all about. If you look at that report released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, it really doesn't pass the laugh test. There's no proof in it. It's a bunch of allegations on a just trust us basis that we have seen abused so many times in the past, whether it was Benghazi or WMDs in Iraq. This is a campaign that has only political goals. It's really a life and death thing for the the Trump administration moving forward now. We'll see who wins.
During his confirmation hearing, Senator Jeff Sessions broke with his boss-to-be on at least one major issue.
Does waterboarding constitute torture?
Congress has taken an action now that makes it absolutely improper and illegal to use waterboarding or any other form of torture.
So they can chop off the heads of an American Christian, and we can't waterboard. It's not fair.
President-elect Donald Trump has repeatedly promised to reintroduce waterboarding and other measures defined as torture by Congress. Sessions, who's in line to be Trump's attorney general, told Congress he considers those practices illegal under current law. Sessions was also pressed on Trump's immigration stance.
A total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
I have no belief and do not support the idea that Muslims as a religious group should be denied admission to the United States.
Trump did later walk back his blanket ban on Muslim immigration, calling instead for tougher vetting processes. But Sessions previously said it was appropriate to begin to discuss Trump's original ban when he proposed it. Sessions also voted against an amendment preventing the Senate from creating a religious immigration test.
An American naval ship fired warning shots at Iranian vessels yesterday. The latest escalation in the increasingly dangerous game of chicken Iran seems to be playing with U.S. ships in the region. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest tonight from the Pentagon. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. At 8 a.m. local time Sunday morning, 4 Iranian fast boats traveling at high speed came within 900 yards of the USS Mahan. That's when the U.S. Navy destroyer was forced to fire 3 warning shots at the approaching Iranian boats. The Mahan fired 50 caliber bullets in the direction of the 4 vessels, whose sailors, we now know, were manning their weapons. The U.S. guided missile destroyer was escorting 2 U.S. warships into the Strait of Hormuz, a Marine amphibious landing ship with 1,000 U.S. Marines on board, and a Navy oil tanker. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has been conducting an annual exercise in the Strait of Hormuz, simulating maneuvers to shut down the entrance to the Gulf, where much of the world's oil passes each day. That exercise is ongoing. Right now, there are no U.S. aircraft carriers in the Middle East. The USS George H.W. Bush has been delayed in the shipyards by 6 months due to sequestration budget cuts. Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat from Virginia, wrote to the head of the Navy late last week, quote, "The absence of an aircraft carrier harms our force projection capabilities and limits some of our military's flexibility to quickly respond to any number of unforeseen events that may arise."
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has issued a formal apology for the State Department's past discrimination against people in the LGBTQ community. Kerry apologized to anyone affected by the department's past employment discrimination based on perceived sexual orientation. He said those employment practices, quote, "were wrong then, just as they would be wrong today."
Well, I understand that we're being picketed by a group of homosexuals.
The State Department was one of several government organizations to conduct mass purges of LGBTQ employees in the 40s and 50s, encouraged in part by the communist purges led by Senator Joseph McCarthy. But as people in the LGBTQ community gained more rights, the State Department's position changed. The U.S. appointed its first openly gay ambassador in 1999 under Bill Clinton's administration, and Kerry appointed the U.S.'s first special envoy to specifically address worldwide LGBTQ discrimination.
Meanwhile, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump once again takes to Twitter, apparently reacting to a report that Russia has compromising information about him. The successor of President Barack Obama has tweeted, quote, "Fake news, a total political witch hunt." His angry reaction comes after U.S. media reported that intelligence officials presented classified documents to Obama and Trump on the matter last week. The documents reportedly included allegations that Russian operatives have compromising personal and financial information about Trump. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is said to be examining the authenticity of the documents.
Failing quickly. I mean, it's really bad. Families can't even go to the doctor because their deductibles are so high, so they just skip having health care.
President-elect Donald Trump wants to quickly abolish Obamacare. GOP lawmakers believe he needs a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act before he does, but he disagrees. He wants to have Obamacare completely out of the system by next week. Still, Republicans are nowhere near having a replacement health care plan ready. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan stated in response to the proposed changes, "We'll use every tool at our disposal through legislation, through regulation, to bring replace concurrent along with repeal so we can save people from this mess."
Now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has reportedly sent a letter to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump demanding him not move the American embassy to Jerusalem al-Quds. Abbas warned that such a move will have a, quote, disastrous impact on the so-called Middle East peace process and the two-state solution, as well as regional stability and security. Abbas also sent letters to other world powers, including Russia, China, and the European Union, urging them to spare no effort to prevent the U.S. from moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Al-Quds. Trump has said he will do so. The outgoing U.S. administration and most UN member states, though, do not recognize Al-Quds as Israel's capital.
These U.S. fighter jets are releasing a swarm of micro-drones.
Mark release.
They're called Perdix micro-drones, and they were originally developed at the MIT Lincoln Lab. They're meant for intelligence, surveillance, and recon. 103 3D printed drones were deployed from FA-18 Super Hornets in October. This is what the swarm sounded like. The drones were given missions, and the swarm was able to perform collective decision-making and fly in formation. It was the largest swarm ever tested by the Department of Defense. Perdix aren't weaponized, but the U.S. isn't ruling out attack swarms for the future.